Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to Intellectual Medicine, the last weekend of August. August is maybe my third or fourth most favorite month.
Third or fourth?
Third or fourth, but September is near the top of the mark. It might be my favorite. You know, it goes under the radar. It's still summer. The weather's nice. Crowds thin out. Just the air dries up. It's a gorgeous month. October's right up there too, though, Shannon. I like October a lot.
October's nice. Can I assume May is your favorite because your birthday's in it?
Well, I mean, just coincidentally happens to be the month of my birth. That is true.
Gotcha.
No, but the August 8th is my favorite day of one of my favorite days of the year.
Call.
It's the day that my wife was born. Hooray! That's the tragedy. It's so much fun to watch play.
16-3 at Fenway. They will try to win a game today when they play at 4 o'clock. Yankees lose to the Mariners 2-1. Their next game is.
So here's what I want to know. What do the North Koreans have against the ocean? They keep bombing it.
And what's going to happen with all the stuff that's now in the ocean?
Just it sinks to the bottom and just blows a box of pie?
That should be good. I mean, obviously it's not good, but...
Now they think we're going to invade them. The question is why? What do they have?
Right, we don't want anything.
We're going to invade them? We're going to steal all their riches?
Nicely on Route 4, even though we did have an earlier crash. 4 South getting off at exit 8, and may still be a little residual activity there on the shoulder. But according to Rhode Island DOT, the travel lanes are
Here's the weatherman standing outside, right? Why?
Seriously, why do they do that? That's so like 1980s.
Oh, look at that roof come off. There's something cool about it. You're just, you know, there's something cool about watching a hurricane smash into the continent. Second, probably your sister's just going to get rain from it.
Yeah.
I found a place in Dallas that does chelation. I was trying to find a source for that artesunate, which is another IV infusion that goes along with the vitamin C that has got good reports. And so I found a center in Dallas that does it, and they gave me their source of reference. They get it from Imipris. So I'm going to order it up from them and start to integrate it.
WPRO News Time is 8:06.
Are we ready?
It's for basic entertainment and informational purposes only. It is solely responsible for its content. It does not necessarily reflect the views of Cumulus Media, its management, or its staff. News Talk 630 and 99.7 FM WPRO presents Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Join Dr. Petteruti as he guides people towards living the 120 lifespan while retaining youth. He'll apply logic, reason, and scientific evidence to address conditions that drain people of their joy and vitality while protecting people from the harmful aspects of conventional medicine. Now, here's Dr. Steve Petteruti.
Good morning, everybody. It's Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti and Shannon. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning.
Well, we've got an interesting show today. We're going to be talking about the history and present state of knowledge of intravenous vitamin C as it relates to supporting the fight against cancer. We'll talk about the scope of evidence and really talk, as we always do, about the philosophy of medicine and the individual decision-making that goes into the process of guiding your own health. We will have a guest on the show after the break. Dan is going to come on, Shannon. He's going to share with us his story about his fight against cancer and how he came to decide what elements to bring to bear. So those are some of the things. We're also going to update you on proton pump inhibitors. You know we've been following this story regarding omeprazole, Prilosec, and other drugs like it, and its potential to affect the brain. And we have some new information on that front, and some new information regarding quinolones. Those are antibiotics, commonly go by the names such as ciprofloxacin, Levaquin. These antibiotics have been tied to problems with tendon rupture and muscle pain. And there's a new complication that we'll be sharing with you, another warning that you need to be mindful about. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the microbiome of the bacteria in the gut of primitive hunter-gatherers and how that affects our health today. But I wanted to start out, Bob called us last week off air and asked a question following up on a topic that we were discussing, which had to do with can you exercise too much? And is too much exercise harmful to you? And he was concerned because his sons had gotten involved with bodybuilding and they appeared to be exercising to a rather extensive degree. The data on that is really quite interesting. It is true that movement is life and exercise is critical for good mental and physical health. On the other hand, you can also take it to a point where it starts to accelerate the free radicals and the toxins that accumulate by virtue of exercise itself. And going from more and more exercise in the pursuit of better health may well be counterproductive. Now, I like to exercise. I like to lift weights. It's a lot of fun. I do not like to do aerobics, so I'm very interested in this topic because I'd like to know the absolute minimum amount of exercise I need to do so that I can never die. And I'm still working on that equation, but the bulk of evidence is pointing toward about 20 to 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise where you get your maximum value. And that is value which relates to cardiovascular health, longevity, as well as weight control. Now, some people have a mistaken notion that they need to burn more calories to lose weight. What you do at that point, folks, is you generate counter-regulatory hormones. So let's say you're exercising for 30 minutes and you think, man, I got to lose more weight. I'm going to exercise for an hour and a half. I'm going to keep going. Well, all you're doing is stimulating your brain to make enzymes and hormones that are going to slow down your metabolism and preserve fat because the body feels it's under assault. That consequently neutralizes the effect of the exercise. So these are things to contemplate. As you exercise, you have to ask the question, why am I doing this? If you do it because you love it, well, then do it. Even if it's potentially counterproductive to your long-term health. The one thing I would say, though, is if you're going to exercise to that level of intensity, make sure you replete yourself with antioxidants. Now, we have that all-star drip at Intellectual Medicine, Shannon.
That's right, we do. Very helpful.
Folks are doing that before competition and finding that the latter half of the races, they're finding more energy and vitality. And I did that recently on a rowing exercise and ended up doing a personal record.
We all know.
Well, you know what? Some people may be new. They may have tuned in.
That's right.
They may not realize that I am a beginner
How
scholar.
did it go? So it was, you said you what? It was faster?
Yeah, it was my personal record by a good 30 seconds on a 5,000 meter rowing machine. I'm very good on the rowing machine. Actually going in the water is a whole other thing. So I may do that today, in fact. Join that Narragansett Boat Club. I'm going to take up rowing. Mostly by default. I'd rather be playing basketball, but my knee doesn't allow it to happen. So anyhow, let's pivot a little bit. I do want to give some background and context to our next guest. Intravenous vitamin C has been a source of hope and controversy for decades. And the story starts with Linus Pauling, the two-time Nobel laureate, who proffered a theory that intravenous vitamin C could help people survive longer who are fighting cancer, and that it had a direct effect, a toxic effect on cancer cells. In the 1970s, he published some case series that demonstrated greater survival in people with cancer. Now, case series are not considered to be the gold standard of studies. The gold standard is considered to be double-blind, placebo-controlled. Those type of studies are very rigorous. They take a long time to execute, and they're very expensive. Linus Pauling laid the groundwork for the controversy, and the controversy seemed to be solved back in the 1970s. It was when a study was done at the Mayo Clinic where they subjected people to vitamin C, and they found that there was no benefit. However, they were using oral vitamin C at doses up to 10 grams. Linus Pauling's theory was based on intravenous therapy at doses up to 100,000 milligrams. In fact, at that level, the vitamin C works by turning into hydrogen peroxide. It stimulates the production of hydrogen peroxide, which is a direct toxin toward the cancer cells. Cancer cells lack an enzyme called catalase that is critical to neutralize the toxic effect of hydrogen peroxide. In essence, the vitamin C becomes pro-oxidative. It lights a fire in the cancer cells. And because cancer cells are very avid for sugar, they suck up sugar at enormous rates. And because vitamin C has a molecular structure that looks just like sugar, the cancer cells suck up the vitamin C disproportionately. If you will, it's a bit of a Trojan horse approach. They get in the cell and they are toxic towards it. They essentially lyse the cell. It doesn't, however, hurt your own cells because your cells have tons of catalase and it neutralizes that hydrogen peroxide, preventing damage. Although this theory sounds great, it is still an unproven modality. There is evidence of benefit. There are case studies of people achieving benefit, but the data is still gathering. And it's hard to gather this data, folks, because vitamin C is generic, cheap, and non-patentable. That's one of the barriers. The other barrier is because those of us who endeavor to make it available are under perpetual assault. We're trying to make this available for those folks who choose this path. At the same time, it's incumbent upon us and upon you to be aware of the limits of evidence. When we come back after this break, we're going to be talking with Dan, who is fighting cancer as we speak, and he'll share with us some of the things that he contemplated as he was making the decision and how the early stages of treatment have gone for him. And we'll continue to expand upon the evidence as we know it and the limits thereof. So stay with us. Most important show. I'm Dr. Petteruti with Shannon. This is Intellectual Medicine. You have Dan on the phone? Did you hear music?
Yeah, he was telling you, like,
The
break.
music? Yeah, okay. So I exited okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, what is that?
Well,
That's why I looked at the clock. I
Oh,
was
you
like,
heard the
what?
music? Yeah,
I
it goes
was
by
like,
so fast.
it was like,
I was just getting in my rap about vitamin C.
well, it's, 8:07 you started. It's only 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised too. Yeah, it was super fast.
I think we should expand our show. I think it should be 2 hours. All of you out there who want a 2-hour show, call WPRO and tell them you want more intellectual medicine. You know why? Because Shannon loves being here. She wants to.
Oh my God.
She wants to spend more time in a studio box
You know
on a
what?
beautiful Saturday
I
morning.
could just set this up and then leave. It would just be live.
It would not be cool at all.
It would.
No. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to
And
be
then
asking
you could
about
just
the
come
baby
back.
powder controversy, Shannon. I want to know this. Did you ever use
It's
baby
been
powder
years ago.
as a hygienic or aesthetic?
I grew up with baby powder. Always. It was always like, you'd be like covered in it.
Really?
By the time the kids were born, there was already like a no, you don't use powder.
Because it was.
You breathe it in.
Yeah.
Boys a little bit different, but they were really specific with girls.
Really? And who's the they you're talking about?
I don't know. Isn't that funny? American Academy of Pediatrics, maybe?
Wow.
It was,
So it was already
don't-
starting to be. The message was getting out
That
that hey,
was-
this may not be so great.
Yeah, 15 years ago. I don't know, how far before that, kind of a gap between when I used it, but. My nan had this tin, this metal tin. I don't know what kind of baby powder, but it wasn't like regular baby powder. It smelled like awesome with this huge like puff, and it had a ribbon on it as like a handle.
Oh right.
Oh yeah, you got like
And you'll-
special powder. Stuff smelled really good.
It's pretty appealing. I mean, the notion of powder feels good on your skin. The talc feels good.
Smelled good. I don't know.
Hi, my name is Leslie.
It's too bad.
My family was looking for a
When that caller calls in, you're gonna have to reiterate because they can't hear.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You guys can't hear, so when the caller's speaking, I'll try to repeat the essence of what he's saying.
cheerful. Mom's very happy.
Well, my pop said it best. Nobody gets out alive, and whether talc causes cancer or not, the information, what we want is information. And then we want the freedom to do with it what we will. So if we know talc may cause cancer and we choose to use it, that's cool. It's your prerogative. On the other hand, if they're hiding information or withholding it, that's not so cool.
That's totally different.
Yep. For my part, I think I'll go without. But then you have things like the aluminum and underarm deodorant. And that can't be good for you.
All right, but I'm not going to stop using that. That's where I say no. Not only me. Let's see everyone else too. That's where I put my foot down.
Look.
Let's all take our chances.
A little bit of risk. It's worth it for you not to stink. Especially you sitting next to me on the bus.
That's right.
On an August day.
Oh,
after you went shopping. So I was thinking of maybe circumnavigating the state on a bike tomorrow. Like maybe Josh and I rent bikes.
You have fun.
Come back. Really? Wouldn't that be cool? You go
for you.
you go on the East Bay bicycle path, cross Mountain Hope, then back up.
Now back to Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
And we're back, folks. I'm Dr. Petteruti along with Shannon. You're listening to WPRO, Intellectual Medicine, on a Saturday morning. So it's such a beautiful day. Shannon and I were just reflecting on what to do. And I thought it'd be fun to ride around the whole state on a bike.
That's not fun. That's not at all. Unless it has a motor on it.
Like an electric bike?
Like some type of motor.
I think it'd be scenic, just going over the bridges, the whole thing, looping around.
You have fun.
So you want to come on that bike ride with me?
No, I don't.
Okay,
No.
well, you're going to miss out. I'm going to take pictures.
There you go. I can, see you through that. We have a GoPro. Put on your head. I can actually see the whole thing.
A virtual tour. Well, riding bikes great for your health, and the vitality of life, the quality of life is one of the most important attributes that we all possess. But when we're afflicted with a diagnosis of cancer, it can have a huge effect mentally and physically. And our next guest, Dan McCarthy, had to cross that bridge, face cancer, the diagnosis, in a rather dramatic manner, and make decisions about how to manage his health. And he's going to share some of that with you this morning. Good morning, Dan. Oh, I'm sorry, Don. I got your first name wrong. It's all right, Don. Well, listen, thanks for being on the show this morning. It's very generous of you to share your story and your time. Now you're living out there in Newport. What do you think about this idea of riding a bike all the way around the state? Does that sound like fun? Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the beginning stages of your diagnosis. How did that come about, Don? Right. Now, from the symptom of stomach pain that began in May, a month later, the CAT scan demonstrated stomach cancer, and it also showed that the stomach cancer had gone elsewhere. Right. So the diagnosis was made by the CAT scan. It showed the cancer had spread, including the liver and lymph nodes, and there was really no time to waste. There must have been, well, how did you feel at that point? There had to be a sense of urgency, right? I need to get this treated quickly. Yep. Now, how did you know? How did you know even to do that? Was it something that you were aware of prior to acquiring cancer, or is it something that you just dove into afterward? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the diet became central to that. You, if I can jump in for a moment, because what you just shared is really at the core of a lot of intellectual medicine. People now have the ability to quickly research thousands of articles, experiences around the world, and with the power of the internet and a little bit of your own knowledge, you can start to discern pathways of care that otherwise would have been unavailable to you. And an intelligent guy like you, able to go in and read this information and make some sense of it. And what we have found often, and the oncologists in Rhode Island are some of the best in the world, they do a brilliant job directing care, and they're men and women of great empathy. But really, they're overwhelmed keeping up with their own fund of knowledge. And to acquire nutritional knowledge and alternative care knowledge is really beyond the scope of, I think, a person's ability. How did you then go from acquiring this information? Did you have a conversation with your oncologist about food therapy and some of these other approaches? Yep. Yep, that's actually a really enlightened approach. And to reiterate it for our listeners, the chemotherapy is a central component of treatment for cancer, especially when it's at the stage where yours is, Don, and the type of cancer you have with proven modalities of benefit. But it was very cool that he was able to be open-minded toward nutritional therapy. And as I understand it, he was even open-minded toward the intravenous vitamin C that came later. You know, we have heard of cases where doctors have forbade their patients from doing intravenous vitamin C or other supplements. And I've had patients, Don, that have told me, doctors will look at them and say, if you do that, I'm not going to treat you. So I'm really pleased that your doc was at least open-minded. That's cool. Wow. Now here's my point of departure, and the evidence is strong here. There's a bulk of research that shows, number one, the intravenous vitamin C to be safe. There are phase 1 studies, several of them, that have validated that outcome. The other is that in the least case scenario, it can neutralize and improve some of the side effects of the chemotherapy itself. And that goes along for radiation therapy. You know, I had a patient who was undergoing radiation therapy for cancer, and his oncologist, radiation oncologist, told him, do not do vitamin C. There's not a shred of evidence that vitamin C will neutralize radiation therapy, and yet, if anything, it seemed to help it. So, you know, this fascinates us at Intellectual Medicine, why somebody would repel information that certainly does no harm and may have some benefit. But that wasn't the case. So you went and you sought out a nutritionist. I know you were telling me it was Melissa on, right. Yeah, that's got to be awful. We hear that often. The quality of life issues come to the surface real quickly. We've heard people say that it's the quality that matters more, Don, and for you to have been a vital man riding the bike path and going from that state of health rather quickly between the cancer and its treatment to feeling just wiped out. You know, can you stay with us? Because I do want to come back and talk more about the next step, which led you to the vitamin C as well. All right, Don's going to stay on hold for us while we cut and go to the Revolution Soft Wash News Center with Doug Lizette. Good morning, Doug.
Dr. Harvey has been downgraded to Category 1 hurricane as it turns slowly inland from the Texas Gulf Coast, depositing 9 inches of rain already.
Yeah, you go from stomach pain to cancer. Bang.
10 o'clock last night with winds of up to 130 miles per hour. Now much more subdued, but still leaving plenty of rain on Texas.
Yeah, I want to know, like,
former Arizona Sheriff Joe
you know, how's he feeling and how's it helped, and
yeah,
all that stuff.
we'll bring that in. Hopefully our listening audience stays with us.
Recent federal conviction stemming
I'd stay with us.
I'd stay with us.
also focused on Latinos in Arizona. Rhode Island police detective is suing the town that employed her, saying she was discriminated against due to her gender and an injured knee that left her disabled. Holly Cole, a former detective in North Kingstown, is seeking an unspecified amount of money in a federal lawsuit. WPRO Sports.
Movers work on Sundays, right?
ALE stays at 4.5 games.
Movers, when you were a mover.
Oh yeah, during the moving season.
Last night.
Yeah, you were 24/7. You had to make hay when the sun was rising. We could pack and pick a house like that in 2 days. You know, you go in there with a crew.
I know.
Pack it. If it's already, we're talking about our move, by the way, folks. We're heading back to the suburbs. City experience was fun, but we found out why some people don't live in the city. I liked it there. The city was cool.
It was. It was. I was just, you know, I was like, maybe because it's a weekend, they don't work on weekends. That would be insane.
You know, the furniture's moving all the time, and if you're a trucker, you don't take the weekends off.
Right.
You know, it's sort of like being in the Merchant Marine. Yeah, it's, so I used to be able to go in. We would pack a house. The harder part actually was putting everything in the boxes. That took more time.
I could see that, all like that little stuff.
Mm-hmm. And when we did a military move, when we were moving a military family, they had inspectors there watching us, and every little knick-knack had to be wrapped in paper and then packed in a box, and every dish had to be individually wrapped in paper and then put in a dish box and stacked. We would be there 12 hours just wrapping and packing, wrapping and packing.
You want to see how I pack?
You would not have made the cut.
Just throw it all in.
And back then, baby, we were getting $4 an hour and we were loving it. And if it was a real big job and a road driver came in, an independent trucker, he paid us $6 an hour. And then we just carry and lift, and the bane, of course, were pianos and sleeper sofas. The two worst things to move. And get a hump strap and put it around that sucker and just go. Well, I used to bring 3 shirts to work, just sweat through them.
Ew.
Just fill one up, go to the next.
So gross.
We do a local move. We'd go to Connecticut or to Massachusetts, and we'd do an overnighter. We'd sleep right in the truck. We'd set up a sling as a hammock in the truck and just crash right there. Move all day, sleep in the truck, move the next day. You didn't get paid when you were in the truck on the road. You only got paid when you were moving and working. So kind of a mixed bag there, but do what you got to do to make the money. Good, honest work.
These days, you can put your logo on anything, but that doesn't mean you should. Let us show you what a difference the right promotional products can make to help build.
Yeah, moving, boy, that's tough. It's kind of a good way to purge stuff, though. Although we went a little overboard with the purge thing. Don't you think, Shan?
A little bit.
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? We moved from East Greenwich to Providence, suburb to city, and we gave away all of our furniture. I'm not talking about a couple items. I mean literally a house full of furniture. We gave it away because the place we moved into had furniture. It was already furnished. It was rented. We were going to stay there. It was going to be awesome. And when it turned out not to meet our expectations and we decided to move back, yeah, we got to buy a whole house full of furniture again.
It's not really again. We didn't really do it the first time.
Well, okay. The first time we did it, we were newlyweds and broke. We just kind of just filled it up quick. I still think furniture's overrated. Just clutter stuff up.
You need some like lead-in music.
Yeah, we have it, right? Do you do lead-in music?
No, he just does that like with generic whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of late now, but.
Hey Nick, we have some lead-in music teed up. Yeah, every time we come in, we'll come in with music and we'll go out with music.
You've heard of the fun police?
The one thing I have for when you come back is like I have a return bed specific.
Yeah, I want you to see if you can jazz it up with some music. The return thing's a little dull.
Deliciously straightforward coffee, best enjoyed with a smile. So
Sir Nick was so good.
He was the best. I miss him.
He deserved to move up.
He did.
You know, he really did. He was good.
Yeah, we're like the minor leagues down here.
Sorry morning, really. Who's listening?
Saturday morning. Hello, hello, hello.
Now, back to intellectual medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
Yeah, folks, we're back. Dr. Petteruti along with Shannon, with Don McCarthy being very generous with your time. Don, thanks for spending this time with us this morning. What are you going to do later today? Wow. Wow. I'm so glad to hear it. Wow. Wow, that's pretty exciting. And you know, one of the best things though you shared with us just now, Don, is the fact that your energy is back. So they started the treatment, the energy was wiped out, and the suggestion was made to consider intravenous vitamin C. What did you do next? How did you get information to decide if that was worth trying? Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, there must have been some skepticism on your part or on the part of others when it comes to doing something that is so off the beaten trail. How did you face that question from others, and did you have that question in your own mind? Yeah. Right. Right. Well, yeah, no, I think your skepticism is healthy, and I want to share that with our listeners. Vitamin C and other alternatives are very interesting, and there's growing evidence that is starting to segregate the good stuff from the stuff that's maybe not so fruitful. But it is still evolving evidence, and it is certainly not FDA approved for treating any disease, and vitamin C is not known to cure cancer. I would say that what we encourage our patients, Don, is what you're doing. Get the best of both worlds. When you're in a pitched battle against a devastating foe, you don't want to leave any of your ammunition on the beach. And this is a study that we collect all the data, not all, but a lot of the data, Don, on vitamin C, keeping up with its literature. And there was an interesting study done, published in Integrative Cancer Therapy 2014. They reviewed all the studies, all the major studies on intravenous cancer, and tried to come up with some conclusions. And they said, and I quote, intravenous vitamin C may improve time to relapse and possibly enhance reductions in tumor mass and improve survival in combination with chemotherapy. And the emphasis there is its potential benefit and its uncertainty. And as good as things go for some of our patients, you can never tell what exactly is doing the work. So you're feeling better now, and it could just be the chemotherapy itself that's doing all the benefit. Right. Yep. Well, the energy is the thing that really strikes me, because I know you said earlier that that had been really taken from you, and now you're feeling it restored. I couldn't agree more, Don, and I think you're the embodiment of it, because you are beating it. And I think we sometimes cast that fight in inappropriate balance, right? I mean, you beat cancer by living great, which you're doing, and by restoring energy and maintaining it and pushing the envelope and pushing the envelope. And when you move off of an orthodox pathway to an unorthodox one, it doesn't abandon thoughtfulness and it doesn't abandon discretion. There are so many things out there. Now you're in the alternative cancer world, Don. You must bump into 1,000 things, because there's so much that's out there on the internet. How do you segregate what you want to do from what you don't want to do? Right. So there does come a point where, and this is one of the ways that we like to help our patients, and I'm glad you're getting some input from Melissa as well, trying to focus on the things that are most valuable. And there are a few things that we emphasize to all of our listeners. Stress is a killer, and we absolutely never want to see a patient put in a crossfire. What I mean by that, your oncologist is supportive, at least tolerating and not prohibiting the pathway you have chosen. If an oncologist is absolutely dead set against it, we'd rather not have a patient stuck between two philosophies, because nobody has certainty regarding the absolute best journey to make. We have a lot of good evidence regarding the vitamin C and how it can help people, and we advocate for it. But it's certainly not for everybody. And you've got to have a philosophy and an enlightenment and a willingness to try something a little bit unconventional. On the other hand, it is imperative that there's got to be plausible scientific evidence. With intravenous vitamin C, there is a mechanism of action that's been well described. There are scientific studies that have shown activity in vitro or in the lab against a host of different cancer cells. And we're starting to slowly accumulate the clinical evidence. And Don, you're one of those people that are going to help add to that fund of knowledge by what you're doing and by how you're living. And at Intellectual Medicine, we're keeping stock of and tracking these outcomes as patients move forward. And we like to see the opportunity to take the cancer treatment beyond chemotherapy. So at some point, Don, the chemotherapy comes to an end. And they say, well, you've done your cycle. Well, the tumors in the cancer are still lurking. And one of the things that we advocate for is ongoing intravenous vitamin C up to a year after the end of the chemo, on the theory that we're going to be able to continue attacking cancer cells and preserving and not harming the native cells. The reason that chemo has to be stopped is because it would kill you if they just went indefinitely, because it is often damaging to the native cells. So you put it all together, and what we're looking for, quality of life, number one, honesty and reflection about its risk versus benefit, and then ultimately the big win is looking at people living beyond any expectations. So those are the things that we're all working toward, and I'm so glad to hear that you get a nice boost of energy and going to get out on that bike today, Don. That's cool. Well, Don, thanks so much for being with us, and maybe I'll bump into you on the bicycle path later today. All right, man, I guarantee you will not bump into Shannon, though, Don. All right, brother, I will see you down the road, Don. Thanks for being with us. What a great guy. What a refreshing story. I think we have to go to break, though. Is that right, Nick? All right, folks, we're going to take another break. We will be back. This is Intellectual Medicine. Does baby powder cause cancer? And does omeprazole cause dementia? That and other headlines when we come back.
Too much.
Too much what?
I'll talk to you later. Who is this Melissa person? Do you know who she is?
Eat to Live. She's down in Newport, and she's a nutritionist that helps people with, the nutritional approach to good health.
Like the oncologist. I think they do have too much. I just think they need to know that it's okay and who to refer to.
I agree.
You know?
I think that it'd be like me. It'd be like somebody asking me, what kind of chemotherapy should I use?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not an oncologist. Right. That's an overwhelming fund of knowledge unto itself.
Right. That's what I mean. I just think they just shouldn't be disparaging about it.
The ideal setting would be if they had it all integrated. Can you imagine an oncology center with an alternative nutritionist, intravenous vitamin C, all in the same shop?
Barbaric and all that stuff.
Yep.
All that alternative.
Alpha lipoic acid, vitamin C, you have a whole drip bar, if you will, that is a part of that same thing. Or if not that, and this is maybe a more practical idea, have nutrition and IV therapists like me integrate with the oncologist in the educational arena, because there tend to be separate pods, if you will. There's oncology and they go to their conferences, and then there's naturopaths and there are IV therapists and we go to our conferences, and they're sort of
yeah, right.
parallel.
I would never.
Well, wouldn't it be cool to have somebody with a lot of IV vitamin C experience,
of course,
deliver a lecture at one of the oncology formats?
I think it would be great. I could tell you right now how it would go.
Well, I think that it would be enlightening. The other problem with it is the research required to get to the level of proof that would satisfy
But would never. It's
conventional medicine is
generic.
overwhelming.
No one's paying for it.
Well, you're talking about what, hundreds of different kinds of cancer. Each one would require a double-blind, placebo-controlled study that would cost what, 30, 40 million per study.
Right.
That would take what, years to complete. So you need the freedom to operate so that you can gather enough clinical data to help focus those studies. Kind of like what we do.
But you think, you know, with how relatively inexpensive it is, all the research that goes into these chemo drugs and the amount of money that the insurances and the government spends on chemo drugs, that
You know what would be
take a
cool?
piece of it.
If your insurance had a $10,000 kicker, if you're diagnosed with any major disease, cancer, well, let's say cancer specifically. Okay. Cancer specifically, that you could get 10,000 to use at your own discretion. Then it would open it up for a lot of folks.
Now, back to intellectual medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now, 838-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
Hey team, we're back. It's Dr. Petteruti along with Shannon. We were just talking off air about the intravenous vitamin C and other alternative therapies, and I had what I think is a brilliant idea, Shannon.
I'm shocked. You think it's brilliant.
Well,
Actually, I do think it's a good idea.
Thank you. I think the insurance companies, if you're diagnosed with cancer, they should have a $10,000 kicker that goes directly toward the use of alternative and complementary care.
But it should be like cash, not like, you know, insurance reimbursement.
Well,
Somehow.
Right. It would be direct cash to the patient upon
Like
receipt.
an FSA.
Like an
You know what I mean?
FSA, right. I just don't want them getting $10,000 and
No.
going on a vacation.
No.
Although I suppose
Well,
that's,
I mean,
you know what? You know what the treatment for depression is in Norway? This is a patient told me this the other day. They send them to the Canary Islands because we were talking about darkness and vitamin D and how seasonal affective depression may be a consequence of low vitamin D. And they said a treatment in Norway is, and they pay for that. The national health insurance pays for that, and they'll send your family with
probably
you.
a lot less expensive than treating depression for 30 years.
Canary,
Right.
I think I should go to the Canary Islands. That's
Kind of nice. Although, is everyone like depressed there though?
well, not when
That
they
would
get
be
there.
sad.
They get off the plane, they're smiling. They got an hour after they get off the plane, they got one of those drinks with a little umbrella in it. They're all sorts of happy. Oh man. So here we go. Baby powder. I just love baby powder. It feels good. It smells good. What's not to like?
Oh, it was so nice.
Wasn't it?
It was. It
The
was so
innocence
nice.
of our youth, right? We smear that junk all over the place. Well, it turns out that there is potential for baby powder to cause cancer. Dr. Daniel Kramer from Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston has been sounding the alarm on this for decades and has been advocating for Johnson & Johnson to put a warning label on baby powder. I think that would spoil the party, huh? Like, may cause cancer.
Kind of would, yeah. I mean, who's going to use it in like their newborn?
Well, a jury in California found in favor of a woman who acquired ovarian cancer, and she blamed baby powder for part of her disease. She got a settlement or an award of $417 million. There are now thousands of cases in the pipeline against Johnson & Johnson regarding this issue. Boy, that could bankrupt the company.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Well, what they did is they found in studies that there's the talc from baby powder. They found it in the ovaries, and they found it in tumors. And they found that the talc has a consistency and a structure similar to asbestos. So here we are with this beautiful product that everybody loves, and I hardly use it. I mean, I think this is more women than men that use baby powder, and babies, right? So you were telling me that you were aware 15 years ago when your son was born that that was a risk.
Right. We were told not to use it. Never used it.
How about personally, though?
But it
Didn't
was-
every woman use it growing up?
Well, yeah, when I was younger, but I mean, that was, I don't know if we knew 30 years ago.
Can you imagine life without baby powder?
Well, now, yes. No, you just don't use it. You use something else.
See, that's the thing. So you wonder, will something else become the next cancer causer.
Isn't it always?
It's frustrating.
I know. We were just talking about deodorant, right?
Yeah, we were. That, the aluminum in deodorant could be a threat as it absorbs and affects your brain.
Don't stop using it.
You'll put up with a little bit of dementia on my part just for the
I will.
aromatic benefit. Well, I think the intellectual medicine take on that is when you have accumulating evidence of a potential harm, you have to weigh risk-benefit. And considering the fact that nobody's going to suffer the absence of baby powder, I say we move away from this product and find something else. There's got to be better ways. Along that same line, when we look at harm in everyday products, there's one that I think we should highlight, and we're coming into the season now where a lot of folks are going to start their wood-burning stoves. And it's that nice smell, and isn't it? It's a pollutant, folks. It's interior pollutant. You're having particulate matter that you're sucking into your lungs. That nice smell you're getting is also noxious. So I don't understand the affinity for heating with wood. It's like, would you heat with coal? Would you bring coal in your house and throw it in the furnace?
Oh, but it's like wintertime and the snow.
I get it. Yeah, the Yule
falling.
log. They have towns in Montana that have lingering smog from wood-burning stoves just choking things out.
You can never get the temperature right. You got a fire going, it's like 90 in there, and you got to open the windows with the wood.
Well, it does come down to this whole carbon footprint stuff, right? I mean, we can't lament the factories that are burning coal or oil or gas, and at the same time churn like wood as our means of heat. And that's not cheap either. Although I will say one thing good about wood. If you're cutting it yourself, you're getting great exercise, right? You don't think so?
We're not getting an axe.
We're not getting an axe?
We're not getting an axe.
God, it's such a manly thing to do, though. I say I've got a very feminine job. I sit around all day long on my little stool and dispense advice. I'm like Anne Flanders. It's like, so anyhow, we need to highlight you. Cipro users, Levaquin users, there's a condition called pseudotumor cerebri. It's a condition of increased pressure in the ventricles of the brain in the absence of any blockage or tumor that can cause disabling headaches and damage the optic nerve, causing visual impairment ultimately. And they have found that risk goes up 5 times within the 14 days after using a Quinolone antibiotic. That, added to the other warnings, gives us pause when it comes to using antibiotics. And we can link this into another study they did looking at lower respiratory tract infections, better known as bronchitis. This is the season, Shan, where people start coughing and the cough is colored and they say, boy, I got to nip this in the bud. We got to go get an antibiotic. Well, it turns out, folks, that cough, if you're otherwise healthy, a non-smoker without chronic lung disease, that cough is viral. And that antibiotic can do you harm. Not only can it cause pseudotumor cerebri, and by the way, that also was associated with doxycycline, though not as intensely. It destroys your microbiome, the healthy bacteria in your gut. It can create resistant organisms. So there are a lot of bad things that can happen with the use of these antibiotics. Now, one thing doctors have done at times, and I've done this in the past, give them prednisone. You got this cough, you're wheezing a little bit, give them prednisone. Recent study looked at a very well-done study, found no benefit with prednisone. So now the antibiotics don't work. Prednisone doesn't work. What are you going to do? You'll see the doctor in your coffin.
You're going to get a drip.
You're going to get a drip.
It's a virus. You got to let it ride it. Ride it out.
So you make good point. That's the thing. It's your immune system that's going to beat this sucker. And we do have infusions intended to help support immune function. There's good evidence behind that as well. So on to the good evidence, new information regarding radiotherapy for breast cancer. After they remove tumors from the breast, it's common practice to irradiate the breast in order to prevent local recurrence. A study done recently found that a partial irradiation, where they narrowed the beam and had a smaller area treated, actually had the same outcomes as whole breast irradiation. This is important because women who get their breast irradiated suffer consequence years later. The tissue becomes stiff, the radiation can affect the underlying lung, and it can cause pain. So there are a lot of questions regarding its merit, and the idea that they can reduce dose is exciting. Now you can take the next step and say, should you bother with that at all? That's a deeper conversation. So new stuff from the headlines of news. The other one, of course, a lot of questions I get, Shan, have to do with the whole muscle building issue. And we talked about that with Bob last week, and the question always comes up, how much protein to build muscle? Well, a study done recently validated what folks in the gym have known for a long time, and that's protein works when you take it and you're lifting weights. And after you lift weights, your body will be building muscle for the next 48 hours. And we don't know the perfect timing for that protein intake, but a good rule of thumb is 1 gram of protein for every pound of your body weight, presuming that you're reasonably in shape. If you're overweight, you cut it back a little bit. So how many grams of protein did you take, Shan?
Cute.
That's a question you never ask a woman.
Surely not.
I can tell you.
A lot of protein, though.
A lot of protein.
There's no way.
Well, I'm going to get my protein, folks, and I'm going to go and circumnavigate the state. I'll let you know if I made it next week. And as always, we'll keep you tuned in to the things that can keep you alive, healthy, and vital. Every week on this show and every day in our practice, we strive to help you live 120 youthful and healthy years. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'm Dr. Petteruti signing off with Shannon on WPRO, Intellectual Medicine.